hope that today this will be a start to compare a few notes and let people know how far-reaching this problem is and how much needed long-term care is for the people that already have contacted the disease. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Lisa Freeman. Lisa and I have talked extensively about this and about getting some coverage and exposure, along with Lisa Laney. And Lisa, of course, she's very, very vocal about the issue, and she has a business in town which is thriving, and she just doesn't let anything stand in her way.
I wanted to thank Anthony for coming to represent Congressman Keating, who I met a number of years ago when I was walking in the Brewster and Bloom Parade supporting Lyme disease. Congressman Keating was ahead of me, and he mentioned that he thought he knew about Lyme disease, but I instructed him a little bit further, and that led to some changes in Congress. So Anthony's going to talk about that. But I've been running the Brewster Lyme Support Group now for 9 years, and I took it over when the pastor that was leading it moved to Chicago, and I really, truthfully, didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was going to be getting into, and I started to hear the stories of the suffering of so many people not being able to get treated, having to go out of state to get treated, having to pay out of pocket for their doctors, the travel and the testing, and it really became overwhelming to hear the concerns from everybody. And I just really made it my passion at that point to want to help. I was a visiting nurse, and I knew the resources in the community, and I thought that I could help fix this pretty quickly, and I soon learned that I couldn't because there weren't really any resources. Dr. Danta, at the time, was very willing to see people, but it would take 2 months to get in to see him, which was not acceptable at the time when someone was very sick. And it really was a loss when he retired last year. That was a big problem with the Lyme community. We miss him very much. People are able to get some help in Massachusetts now with the passing of 2010, the Physician Protection Bill. But most of the doctors that are treating are not taking insurance. There's only maybe 1 or 2 that are taking insurance, and the wait to get in to see them is months and months and months. And there's no doctor that is taking Medicare, which is a problem. So this is a disease for the rich. You know, you have to pay for your medications out of pocket and your treatments, and it's devastating to people. People have lost their jobs, they've lost their homes, they've lost their families, they've lost their livelihoods. I've had, since I've been running the Brewster Support Group, and for over the past 9 years, 2 people have successfully committed suicide, and 1 attempted that we were able to intervene and save that person's life. So it's a huge, huge problem. So I'm here to do what I can to help. And Anthony's here to pass the information on to Congressman Keating. I have letters that people have written that couldn't be here that I'm going to ask him to take and pass on for me. So.
Okay, I guess, so my name is Anthony Morse. I work for Congressman Keating in his Hyannis office. I'm a district representative. I just wanted to come by, and I'll be happy to talk to people maybe during or after. I don't want to take up too much of the meeting's time, but just to give you guys an update and an idea of where Congressman Keating is with the Lyme issue. I think shortly after talking to Lisa, he actually joined the Lyme Disease Caucus down in Congress, which is a bipartisan coalition of representatives who want to tackle the Lyme disease issue. I forget the particular congressman's name, but he's a Republican in either New York or New Jersey who started the caucus, so it truly is a bipartisan group. As we're all aware, I think that 95% of the Lyme incidences occur in 13 to 15 states in the United States. So it's and mostly in the Northeast, New England, New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. We understand Barnstable is the highest incident rate in Massachusetts. We understand that. To that end, the congressman supported a bill called HR 789, which was the Lyme and tick-borne accountability and research bill. That bill was going to basically dedicate resources in the federal government to deal with the Lyme disease and tick-borne diseases issue. I've been hearing from the Cape Cod Extension, especially Larry Dapsis, Dr. Donta, Henry Lind, that it's not just Lyme now. We're starting to see babyosis. I think it's called Mew's disease. Yeah, there's some concern that the Lone Star tick is starting to be here in Massachusetts, and especially down here on Cape Cod. That bill got rolled into something called H.R. 6, which is the 21st Century Cures Act, which is a big, basically medical research bill that's going to be dedicate resources to all sorts of cancer treatments, other diseases, but there's a specific carve out for Lyme and tick-borne illnesses for that. That passed the House. It is now in the Senate. So our senators across the nation will have to vote on that. I know the Congressman signed on to a $5 million CDC appropriation to get more money towards Lyme research. More recently we had signed a support letter to the Cape Cod healthcare systems to support their efforts on Lyme. I know a lot of this is trying to figure out where the ticks are and what diseases they're bringing, but we're working hard on this issue, and I think one of the reasons I'm here is to hear what, if anything, we can do on the federal level to help Lyme people who have Lyme disease and prevention and treatment going forward. But there is progress. There is progress that's being done. HR 789 2 years ago had an analog. I don't know the bill number. That also passed the House and got stuck in the Senate. So there's movement. We just, and we're hopeful that we can get something done soon. But we're involved. We're here. And we're here to listen. So.
On just the movement of it getting past the Senate, you said it's been in there for 2 years. Do you know what they're hung up on?
Well, the first bill it got passed late in last Congress. I think this is every 2 years you have to refile the bill. So this year they got the Lyme disease portion in early, and then 21st Century Cures got passed with the tick and Lyme provisions. I don't know why it's stuck in the Senate. I just don't know. That's not something I'm quite understanding of.
Had you heard anything about insurance having something to do with that?
No, I haven't heard anything about the insurance companies necessarily flocking, and it wouldn't be, if it was the insurance, I don't think I don't want to speak too deeply on that. I don't think it would be specifically on the Lyme portion.
Right. There's been a lot of news articles, like in the Boston Globe, and you're seeing where they're increasing on the middle. I have a business as well.
Mm-hmm.
And a small business,
Yeah.
And I know it'll affect, middle class
Mm-hmm.
with covering insurance, and,
Yeah.
I'm strapped for funds, and it would be one of the first things I'd be open to,
Mm-hmm.
offering to my employees, understanding what I've been through. So
Right.
I know with insurance and coming from that area, that's where it's getting squashed because
Mhm.
we can't afford it.
Right.
But knowing the devastation of it,
Right.
I think differently,
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's what's going on.
I don't want to speak too deeply about the sort of national level politics, since they put me in Hyannis. They don't send me down to DC too often,
Yes.
and but I can tell you that the House passed it, and I think by a fair majority, and so I don't know what national level politics are playing out in the Senate on the bill.
Okay.
Yeah, I got two points I want to make. My name is Neil Angel.
Mm-hmm.
Some of what I hear here is that we're starting the process of researching things. We have a lot of people that already have it and need help with it now. We have Obamacare and various things now that basically approve health plans. What can we do to get this as a treatment under approved health plans, and in addition to approved health plans, but also Medicare too?
Like I said, I'd be willing to talk to you guys about how the insurance companies deal with this, since for me, I don't know how insurance has dealt with it with people in the past. I know in the short term they just give a lot of antibiotics. For the long term, I don't know what the long term issue is about them prescribing it, but I'd be happy to talk with you guys about seeing if there are vehicles in which we can change the insurance. And not to put this on the state level people too, your state level reps and senators can also make changes to the insurance programs here in Massachusetts.
Well, the thing, we have insurance departments in the state of Massachusetts.
Right.
And basically, they could mandate that under health plans approved for inclusion in Obamacare or whatever, that treatment for Lyme disease be part of the plan that they offer.
Yeah.
And that should be.
Yeah, and if it's a state level issue, again, and as you know, I think working with your state reps and your state senators, Dan Wolf, I know, has been a big supporter. David Linsky up in Natick has been a big supporter of this. If we can find a federal way to do it, we'd be happy. We'd be happy to sort of find a way as well.
Yeah, I think that you got the two things. You got on the state level, you have the insurance departments. On the federal level, you have Obamacare.
Yeah.
And between the two of them, we can do something if we can get people to move on that.
Right.
It's educating the doctors because they are still caught up on the old CDC protocol, which has been taken down.
Right.
And at this point, they're not even educated to that when you walk into a doctor's office.
Right.
So when we come in knowing, and we're not trying to be all powerful because we're not PhD doctors,
Right.
but we're the ones sick and have done the research and they don't have time to, they're already too busy. We walk into a doctor's office, they're outdated on the book.
Right.
And so we're fighting for our lives, and there's nobody teaching the doctors. So I think it has to start there, and then it should be mandatory that all hospitals have to have education on Lyme, because especially on the Cape, at Falmouth and Cape Cod Hospital, if they're not educated, they're missing quite a bit.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. I mean, I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
And they're getting misdiagnosed, and that alone costs more money than diagnosing and treating properly.
Yeah.
So I think, if anything, taking that money, educating the doctors is actually, in the long term, going to save money. There's a lot of malpractice going on, and I think a lot of angry people, and I am hoping to stop that.
Right.
Because it's not the doctor's fault. They're overworked.
Right.
So there has to be some system put in place, like yesterday, saying every doctor in the ER has to be aware, and nurse has to be of Lyme, aware of Lyme disease, co-infections, and don't be afraid to treat.
Right.
And I don't see it happening anywhere. What can we do for that?
Again, that a lot of that is, I would say, you're going to want to work on the state level for changes like that. And I think that's the best thing. And we can work with the CDC to have them get more information. I know we have been. I know we've been talking to them a lot more recently about what's going on. But again, for the hospitals in Massachusetts, it's a mandatory treat. I think that, again, that's working with David Vieira, that's working with Tim Madden for the next few months, that's working with Dan Wolf and Vinny De Macedo, because you can mandate those changes in Massachusetts much more easily than we can on the federal level. And that's not to, there are things we can do on the federal level in terms of getting research money. We can work with the CDC on maybe getting new protocols, although I don't want to promise anything like that. But as we talk about what's going on in Massachusetts, I think what state insurances are mandatory covered and what the doctors have to treat in, I think to be, if you want to work on licensure issues, that's always going to be on the state level. That's not.
Or even protecting the doctors that are treating, because you have someone like me who's super sick saying, I'll sign off anything if you'll help me because that's better than non-treatment.
Right.
They're still afraid because you're sick, Bethany, and you know what, if something happens to you, that's malpractice.
Right.
But I signed something off, it's no good because I'm sick.
Right.
So the legal ramifications for a doctor is both ways.
Right.
They're in trouble either way.
Right.
And is there some kind of provision for these doctors that would allow them to be able to safely treat if someone is that sick that, I think the statistics now are 1 out of 3 people with chronic Lyme either die of organ failure or suicide.
Right.
And if that doesn't get to the state level and have them understand the death toll on chronic Lyme at this point, it's upwards of 7 times the size of cancer.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
And again, I'll take these stories and we can see what we can do. I just the pace of change is going to be a little quicker on the state level than it is
I
on
get
the
that.
federal
I get
level.
that.
Yeah.
There's just so much concern, and it's just rapid.
No, and I don't want you guys to think that we don't. Sorry, I don't mean to talk to the people behind me with my back turned. But I don't want you guys to think that we're not, that we're ignoring this. We're finding what we can and push on it.
Well, it's kind of a catch. I get it. I
Yeah.
see that it's a 50, one side it's bad and the other side is bad because there's no protocol.
Yeah,
But I think what's worse is human suffering and no compassion.
absolutely.
So if the human suffering can be dissipated, I mean,
Yeah.
for me, if I was encephalitis, meningitis, dying, they told me that they wanted to put me on psych meds. If I didn't go and fight for my own treatment, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
Right.
So without me fighting, I had zero compassion. I thought it was nuts.
Yeah.
In the end, 2 months ago, what Spalding said to me? Congratulations, Bethany, you made it here. Not many people would fight as hard as you. I would have been stuck in a wheelchair with MS.
Right.
I'm walking because of my own fight.
Right.
So the amount of people that think they're crazy,
Yeah.
it's not fair.
No.
And there's no compassion.
No, I understand.
If anything, they say get out. I was kicked out of my primary's office, kicked out. I don't want you as a patient anymore because they misdiagnosed me. I never said malpractice. I said, let's just help me. They said, get out.
Right.
I think it boils down to a standard of care issue.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm hearing from a lot of people, and what happened to myself is a standard of care that the doctor is going to provide, and they don't want to deviate from that standard of care. So if the standard of care is not to prescribe an antibiotic, or and I notice that standard of care has changed over time. The critical thing to change would be the standard of care which the doctor is providing, because that is what determines whether or not there is a malpractice or not. So a doctor does not want to go outside of that standard of care. So they have a guideline or some types of standards that they're looking at, and if they don't help people, then they need to be revised. And that would help the doctors provide the care to the patients.
I have this other thought that just crosses my mind often, and I know the CDC was, and they're not anymore, but they were coming down really hard on doctors who were treating.
Mhm.
And what I didn't understand was how come the CDC wasn't coming down on doctors who were not treating by the Democratic oath? Because the standard of treatment isn't based on blood testing. It's not based on that. It's based on a person-to-person clinical evaluation. So what I cannot and will not understand is how insurance can decline based on a doctor's what they say.
Yeah.
And so it's incorrect, and it's wrong, and it's malpractice because it's not based on blood tests. From the get-go, go back years, it was never based on blood tests. So insurance has declined because of financial reasons, and the doctors had to, move away, step away, because they're not getting paid, and they're seeing things that are going on. So the Lyme patients have now just gotten weaned out of the medical system, and we're stuck being paid out of pocket because the only doctors that will help are the ones that are not getting scrutinized by the insurance companies. And then those doctors get bad names because the big, Mass General or the big hospitals say, oh, they're not a doctor, they're making you pay cash. They're scamming you. When in reality, they got me to walk again. It was out of pocket. There's nothing more I could do. And it's really sad, and I think that it has to be looked at both ways. If those doctors were scrutinized for treating, then the ones that have not treated, they should be scrutinized as well. There's a lot of people that they turned away.
If we want to do something on the state level, and there are a number of people working towards this, what can we do proactively beyond this meeting for our voices to be heard, for our stories to be shared?
I think, as we talk about this, I think you have a captive audience on the Cape. I don't want to speak for the other Cape Cod delegation. I don't want to speak for our state level representatives, but the fact that I'm here means you already have me as an advocate, and you already have, my guess is you already have some David Vieira and Tim Madden. Again, all of the, Brian Mannell, Sarah Peak, Tim Whalen, all of them. My guess is that they're supportive of you guys. I think what it is it's getting outside the district and getting your friends in other districts or other parts of the state to sort of talk to, who they need, their state reps, their state senators, calls to Governor Baker, getting those meetings, I think are always helpful. And I was talking to Lisa about this before, it's also having a vehicle to go on, because I think it's easy to sort of say, this needs to change. they need to know what to change. You have to point them in the right direction, saying like, here, look, here's a specific provision. Here's what the insurance has been doing to us. Is there something you can do in this, in this sphere that can change it?
So it's that specific. And then what groups are they meeting with to sort of get the ball rolling? Like, what are the steps they're taking?
What are the steps our state? I don't want to talk for them because I don't represent them. That's a question for Tim Madden, or it's a question for them that's to answer. But again, usually what these meetings are is meeting with advocacy groups. It's meeting with we meet with the Cape Cod Extension, and then sort of taking their suggestions, or meeting with Ron Gangemi. We meet with them. We sort of say, okay, what's going on? Tell us what's going on, and then we can see what we can do from there. But like I said, I don't want to speak for anyone other than our office. So, yeah.
And Anthony, it's not just a regional problem. I mean, if you think about all the people that come to the Cape in the summer, get bitten, go home, they're going home to doctors that don't know how to treat them or even recognize that they have a problem.
No, and we've talked to the extension, and we have heard that as a problem. The Cape's population swells from 220,000 ish to about 1 million people over the summer. People who aren't from here, they come, they get bit, they don't know what happens, and they go home. And so we definitely understand that. And that's where the prevention piece comes in. That's when getting people to realize that maybe to recognize where ticks are, how to look for tick bites and all that. So I do understand it's not just a regional problem, and it isn't a regional problem. It's right now. It's in 15 states. So we know that it's not just to Barnstable. And there's incidences in Plymouth County. There's incidences in Bristol County for our district. So we know it's not just a Cape issue.
I've heard that it's actually now in all 50 states and worldwide.
Okay.
So that number is completely, yes.
Yeah, maybe I'm behind.
It's worldwide now.
Yeah. I know
in different versions.
Right. And again, with this latest bill, it's not just the Lyme disease portions of it that this money's going to go to, or it's going to go towards vector-borne.
Is there a piece of it that the Cape, because it is such a hotspot, with tourism, you're talking numbers, one of the major concerns is if we're a hotspot, our tourists are they going to want to come here?
Right.
So politically speaking, we don't want to talk about it. I'm a small business. I understand the theory, but at the same time.
So again, I don't want to speak for the other offices. All I can do is say that we're here right now. We've been talking about it. We're on a caucus. We're on. We've been passing. So at least from our office's standpoint, we're not afraid to sort of tackle it as an issue.
I mean, there's a great idea. I mean, we have good hospitals, Cape Cod Healthcare, I think the infectious disease doctor, because like you said, the new tick that's here, it's malaria-like, and it's on Sandy Neck Beach, and they have Harvard down there, and they're combing the fields trying to see what's going on, and they've hired the infectious disease. I believe he was trained in Africa for malaria, so we are beefing up the healthcare system to somewhat be able to tell if it comes walking in. But wouldn't it be the wisest thing if we were to invest some money into I'm talking like worldwide wellness center that can treat like everything that we're talking of, because it is the biggest epidemic of all time right now, and we're the biggest hotspot, and people are traveling everywhere and going home with it.
I think that's a conversation you need to have with Falmouth Hospital or Cape Cod Hospital, and I guess that's the. I know I don't want to make it sound like that's, but
that's good for direction.
Right, but for us, it would be great if you guys have a wellness center, but we can't just make one appear. Like there has to be maybe. I guess the question is maybe.
I guess it's like, where's the steps that you start at besides, you're doing your homework to get things passed through, but we have all these people from everywhere sick, and I'm talking people traveling from other states here, because we do have more. I mean, Falmouth Hospital, of all hospitals, one of the best for tick-borne diseases, believe it or not. I mean, you go to Mass General, where, Dr. Steer, he's amazing. Falmouth will treat you better.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I think meetings like this are where it starts. It's starting with, I mean, again, for the political standpoint, we can try to get funding. We
that's
can do.
what I'm looking for,
Yeah, we can do all of that. Try to get federal funding at the end of the day. I should point out that earmarking was eliminated in 2010, so we can't necessarily directly say that the Cape needs X amount of money. But I think what this is then it's also inviting the doctors from Falmouth Hospital or Cape Cod Hospital, or it's inviting the Mashpee Wellness Center,
Right.
and it's working with them to sort of maybe create a working group that says how are we going to tackle this problem here, you know?
or how to get the funding, or where does the funding get appropriated, you know?
For the state level,
Yeah.
that's your state reps and your state senators. For the federal level, I mean, it's us, but again, earmarking's gone, so we can only sort of broadly advocate for more money towards Lyme, and which we are, you know, and then not to get too far into it, then people like Charlie Baker or the hospitals have to apply for grants that we can, on the reverse side, we can help, you know, sort of help you with letters of recommendation, try to go that route. But you know, there is probably private funding tied into it. I don't want to again speak quite outside what I don't know, but I would say working with your hospitals and working with the wellness centers and work groups like this. If you can get a working group of these people together and sort of start coming up with an idea of sort of how you want this to go, what you want and when you want it. You know, I think that's kind of the basic advocacy model. You know.
It sounds like you're better off with private practice right now until the big, hospital systems, they're tied to insurance right now. So without a CDC protocol,
well, right, and again, it's even talking to the Division of Insurance. It's seeing if you can get someone from Governor Baker's office to send someone to talk to you guys about what's going on.
That would be good.
Yeah,
really good, so, because I have never talked to anybody in insurance that is willing.
Yeah, and remember, the Division of Insurance isn't the insurance company. It's kind of the regulatory body.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That would be good.
Yeah. So I mean, those would be my recommendations. But I what you have to do is you kind of and again, you guys have done it for us. The Lyme disease community says we need more money towards treatment, prevention, and so we've been able to do that a little bit. We've been able to direct that a little bit. So.
An interesting aside here is the tourism factor.
Yeah.
Great whites and Lyme disease. So right away you've got a problem, there with tourism and the economic outfall. Just a little background. I have a daughter that's gone chronic for more than 10 years. So I've been somewhat exposed to it, interacting with my daughter. She treated for years under Dr. Dondi, and some of you recognize that name, was, I guess, acknowledged one of the experts until he retired recently. So there's a long history, and she's still suffering pretty much daily, operates but suffers daily. And then, of course, you had the difference between, was it Dr. Spencer in Connecticut and Dr. Dondi, and they wouldn't agree on the types and lengths of treatment and the post-treatment, and that was a mess within the medical facility. I am very encouraged over the last year with the amount of public information getting out there. There have been several excellent long, comprehensive articles in the Cape Cod Times. I consider that to be a major advancement in educating the two factors that are very important. One is the education of the doctors, the medical facility, and misdiagnosis, and the awareness of the public that perhaps they have been misdiagnosed. Beyond that point, the treatment seems to be very much in doubt and a lot of differences of opinion. And you mentioned the CDC. This is not just a Barnstable problem. Mm-hmm. My daughter happens to be out in the center of the state.
Right.
And it's chronic out there. If you get into it, you go out to Ohio and Michigan. This is the Midwest, the South. This is not a local problem. And I can't understand why it has taken more than 10 years to start to move, say, the CDC with an adequate test, because the Western blot, as I remember from my daughter, really might be accepted, but really the whole diagnosis was based on symptomatics. You know, and then they said, well, you had chronic flu or something else, or fibromyalgia or whatever. I can't understand why nationally there isn't a good, reliable test. Now, as a non-professional and just experienced through my daughter, the bacteria is a spirochete. It's a type of bacteria. It's the same one, basically family, as syphilis, which was a curse on humanity for thousands of years. But they found, I guess, many, many years ago, arsenic, I guess, helped it, but it has been cured. Why then has this become chronic? And what I think I'm hearing is that if it is under control, the spirochetes, the organism hides in the tissue and isn't accessible to medical treatment. But I can't understand why something that's as prevalent as this and as serious as this is, a decent test hasn't been developed and decent treatment hasn't been. But I am encouraged with the amount of public communication is out there now. And I think education of the medical, all right, that's another question, is why has the medical profession been, I would say, deficient in this and not educating their own people or taking a leadership?
I don't have a good answer for you, and because I don't sit with the medical professionals. And so I don't want to speak for them. I don't even really hypothesize.
Take a flyer and speak for them.
Well, but that would be. I don't want to speak for them on that part, and I don't think it would be right for me to do so.
Well, speak for yourself.
I speak for the Congressman's office when I say that I can't speak to what happened before, but I can speak to us moving forward. We are trying to get the funding for, the research funding will go towards finding treatments. It will go towards getting better testing done. I know one of the problems originally was that even with the Western blot test is that you'd get a lot of false negatives or
cross-reactivity.
Right, and so then you have to get a further set of blood tests and a further set of blood tests, and even then sometimes it was still maybe you have it, maybe you don't. So trying to find a reliable test, I think, is something that they're still. Well, and I think that's something that the research money would go to is, can we find a test? Can we find a treatment? But I think you're right that public information is important. It gets people involved. It gets people to push people to do other things. It also gets people who might have the disease to stand up and say something. So, like I said, we're working hard to get what we can through and figure out what's going on and move whatever balls we can forward. So,
just speaking from going to the hospital and having a Herxheimer reaction, which is something that would happen with syphilis if you're having treatment. When the spirochetes die off, it has multiple toxins, one being ammonia that goes straight to your brain and causes illness while the spirochetes being killed off. What happens is you go to the ER with an array. I mean, you could think you're having a heart attack there's just too many things to go through. So when you go to the ER doctor, they check you to make sure you're not having all these things, but they don't know that you're having a Herxheimer reaction. So they send you home saying, go to your primary. Even if we do know what it is, they don't, because they're not educated. And so they do all the testings that insurance pays for, send you home, you go to your primary says, oh, the Lyme test said no. Let me send you off to infectious disease if you think so, but the CDC said your Western blot said no. So I can't get paid unless that paper says you definitively have Lyme. So they don't want you. So it comes down to a financial funnel. In the end, there's no other way. So the people that are paying out of pocket, the fact of the matter, science has proven that the only way you have a Herxheimer reaction is if you're killing either Lyme or a co-infection and you can physically see it. Doctors watch it, they track it, they detox you, they say you couldn't have this reaction unless you had Lyme. Even with that said, insurance will decline because they don't have a paper trail. But a doctor's word, their Hippocratic oath on treating, is not good enough and insurance declines it. So in the end, it's unethical, and I think the CDC needs to be looking at both sides of the page, and it's unacceptable. The patients are getting killed.
The problem and the frustration that we're all going through is because of the Infectious Disease Society of America. Until they change their guidelines, us doctors won't know what to do, don't know what we're dealing with. Yes, it's a spirochete. Yes, it's an infection that goes through several stages. First stage, you're lucky, you get a bullseye, you find the tick, you get the symptoms. Doctor gives you, I don't know how much doxycycline you're giving now, but 4 weeks was the standard. You get beyond that stage, it gets a little insidious. These little corkscrew-like organisms go into all your cells. They can go into your heart, they can cause heart blocks, they can go into your brain, and they can cause brain symptoms, psychiatric, neurological, cognitive. I myself I don't have a brain that works the way it used to. I wouldn't be able to practice medicine today if I wanted to. Hands, carpal tunnel syndrome, these bugs love to get into the nervous system and cripple you. It's just amazing that the top society in this country for infectious diseases does not recognize this as an infectious disease. Infectious diseases, especially due to bacteria, deserve treatment with antibiotics. Needs to be researched. I don't know. Dr. Donta doesn't know. He just wrote a comment in the Globe to the Globe's editorial. I don't know if you read it yet, Lisa, but about the bill for insurance companies passing. The editorial doesn't help us very much. But it's just that there's such an unknown, and it makes us all frustrated. As much as I know, I can't fix myself. I wouldn't be able to fix you, Bethany. You know? And I'm an internist.
It would appear that from the conversation, 3 major factors have come forth. Education of the medical profession, education of the public, and the other great big one out there is political. Those seem to be coming forth as the major factors or directions. Yeah. If I might, through the gentleman that's chairing this, could I ask what your background? You seem unusually knowledgeable about the subject.
I had to save my life. So I realistically, when I first figured out I had Lyme, it was encephalitis meningitis in the hospital, bedbound for a year. I had no idea what was going on. I got my second opinion up at Mass General. They wanted to put me on psych meds. I was paralyzed waist down, Bell's palsy. I should have been sent home with a PICC line. I wasn't at the time. My blood coagulated from head to toe. The doctor said that they had never seen blood as thick as mine. Thank God I was an athlete. My heart couldn't pump what was going on. It took 2.5 years for them to figure that piece out. So in the meantime, the bacteria is just, running rampant in my system, even though I'm taking oral antibiotics. I'm grateful in that every time they were taking a blood test, it was showing acute Lyme. I'm not getting bit every other month. It's just not the case. And also as a child, I grew up on the Cape. I was bit all the time. I had juvenile arthritis. I've had fusions. I had macular degeneration. By 30, they thought I had rheumatoid arthritis, carpal tunnel, you name it. I've been through the medical system, but I was ignorant to Lyme. I didn't understand. So with my own research, and honest to God, I have 2 children, and without those 2 kids, when I tell you suicide, I would have been out of here. I couldn't take it. And then they'd walk in and I'd go, okay, I have to for them. Not only for me to be a mother, but they will never live with what I just went through, ever. So I have to find a cure, and I just there's not much more I could research. There's much more, but there's not much more. The spirochetes, when it's old, live inside biofilm, and to get through the biofilm is nearly impossible. So I understand, and I have a PICC line, and I am on antibiotics, but I do understand that that's not the answer either. It's keeping me here, it's keeping me functioning and taking care of my children, but I know it's not the answer either. So until they determine, there's enough research to figure out how to control this, this is all I can do to stay here. So it was research to save my life.
Just an observation from what I know from my daughter. Evidently, there's been quite a difference in the antibiotic that's being used. Evidently, that has changed. And you're currently on which one now?
Now I'm on acute. Now, mind you, this is 3 years ago that I had encephalitis.
Okay.
When you first get sick, they put you on doxycycline for the first month, maybe 2 months.
I've heard that, yeah.
3 years later, they've tried multiple. I was on Dante's protocol. I was on many different protocols. Vitamin C. I went holistic. I tried everything, and right now I ended up on super high dose blood thinners, heparin, because I was so coagulated. So they thinned it out, which also helps the biofilm soften somewhat, and then they put me on acute doxycycline, which is as if I just got contracted Lyme. On top of that, I'm on azithromycin, I have Babesia, I have Bartonella, I have mycoplasma, so I don't just have Lyme. And they have now, the studies show that most people, 85% of the people on the Cape who contract Lyme have Babesia and or Bartonella as well. So when you go and treat Lyme, what can happen is your Lyme goes dormant, your blood test looks good, you still don't feel good, but it activates the Babesia or the Bartonella, the other co-infection that you might have, which Babesia is the hardest one to show in a blood test. The absolute hardest one. They tested me for 3 years because they symptomatically said, you have Babesia. Not once did it come up positive until last month.
That's an interesting thing too, because you've got babiosis and ehrlichiosis, and now you have two other new ones. So that gets much more
There's over
complicated.
300. There's over 300 now, they say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is this part of the
Well, yeah, it's
Lyme too? Now the fact that
it's Lyme and tick-borne, so it's not just specifically focused on Lyme. It's going to be focusing
That's
on
what I
tick-borne diseases as well. And like I said, we've worked with Larry Dapsis. I know the Cape Cod Extension does stuff with UMass Amherst to sort of pick the ticks off of dogs and see what diseases may or may not be prevalent on Cape Cod.
So you're here for education, but now your organization, where does that stand, and what are your goals, and where are you going?
Well, I mean, I'm with the Congressman's office, so my goal is to obviously listen to you guys, and if there's, and I will make sure to talk to our office about this and to see, again, what things we can push forward, what vehicles there might be to work on issues like this, on issues we're already working on, I think the accountability bill, I think that being put into a major bill is a great first step. But I realize for people who are suffering, or for people who have the disease right now, this is, the treatment, doing research into treatment is going to be a few years too late. But I guess what I can tell you is that at least this money will be used towards prevention and treatment and research going forward.
I'm going to keep talking because I might as well. So for people who have chronic Lyme, never ever is Western medicine the only treatment. And most, we all have insurance, and that's what it covers. The only possible way to somewhat get relief is Eastern plus Western medicine. And so obviously that's not covered. And just to give you a small synopsis on what it was costing, which I had to stop, and it was what got me to walk again. It cost over $1,500 in Eastern medicine alone per month to get me to walk again. So for people who get bedridden, who even have a regular job or whatever, to lose your income and try to afford life itself, yes, we need research, but I also feel like we need some kind of help for people at a certain level of income, because there's no possible way Western medicine, let me tell you, when I was just on Western Dante's protocol, it made me even sicker. So without the other detox, there's so much more to it, but without that other Eastern portion of it, you can't get well. So there needs to be relief for people who are out of work and can't afford it. I mean, it's unaffordable. It's more than some people's mortgages.
Anthony,
Could I ask?
One of the things that strikes me here is things are not moving quickly enough. I mean, you have people here that, which just brought up that things were so bad that if it weren't for children, they would have considered an alternate out. A fellow came to my house recently, and he had Lyme disease more than once. He had 3 times. He's a fence installer. Very religious man. and he said to me, he said, you know, I contemplated taking my life. Now, these people are affected here. I'm affected in a different way. My daughter was on a Lyme trial, and she was then diagnosed probably within a year or two of having MS. And we're not sure that it's MS at this point. It's so often confused with other illnesses. I just don't, I think you guys, and I say politicians in general, are looking at this and they're not exchanging. They're like law enforcement agencies. They're afraid to interact with one another. But the only way these people will get any relief is by some real strong action. I mentioned when I called your office that people were looking to see Bill here today. They really wanted to see Bill. For one reason or another, Bill couldn't make it. But I think there's an indication, it's like Zika. All of a sudden, all you hear about is Zika. Tremendous press coverage. Everyone's concerned with it. They're not concerned to the degree they should with Lyme disease. And that's the problem. It is an epidemic. And to convince you fellas that it's an epidemic seems to be a difficult thing to accomplish.
Well, I think we've acknowledged that. You know, we joined this caucus. We put our name to bills to get these bills passed. So I understand what you're saying. You know, I would say that we're doing all we can. You know, when we're signing letters to the CDC, when we're trying to get money for appropriations, when we're trying to get research in treatment, you know, through we're using our office the best we can. The fact that I'm here, the fact that we meet with the Cape Cod Extension, the fact that, you know, again, he's joined this caucus and, you know, we're working across the aisle. We have a coalition of people. So I agree that in the sense that, yeah, should the public be more aware? Absolutely. You know, I think that would be great. But I think our office is we're doing everything we can, and we're finding what we can, and we're moving it forward. We're having the conversations. You know, again, I don't want to speak for our state level, but again, I know they've been working on it. I know David Linsky's worked on it. I know Dan Wolf's worked on this in the past. So we're trying to find what we can to do to move the progression forward a little bit.
I think the frustration, and there's a meme out there that says nobody gets it until they get it, and there's a lot of well-meaning people that are trying to understand and trying to help on the political level and on the medical level. But I mean, I know, speaking for myself, I didn't really get it until I got it, and I was in a wheelchair like Bethany and paid $4,000 a month for IV antibiotics and $1,000 for supplements and chelation and all of that stuff. But I think it's so hard for people to grasp what we all go through. You know, we can try the best we can, and you can come and listen to us and report back, and you know, there can be groups of people that are, you know, trying to help, you know, in the Senate and Congress, but until it affects their life in some way, or their child or themselves, it's so hard for people to get it, you know, for family members to get it, for anybody to get it. So it's just, you know, you don't wish it on anybody, but it's like, it's so hard for us to tell you what it's really like and our desperation and what we've been through, you know, and for you to, you know, pass it on. It's just, it's like a black hole.
Again, and I don't want to, I understand your guys' frustration with the process, but I would say is that with these conversations we have been able to push things forward. So I don't want to you know, I don't want this to be characterized as it went down the memory hole, it went down never to appear again. We've moved things forward. Right. You know, like, I don't. You
and we appreciate it. My point is, it's just so it's so. I think everybody's frustrations is hard to, you know, put it into words. You know, that are easily, you know. Do you know what I mean?
No,
I'm having a hard time putting this
when you're
into words.
contemplating suicide.
Right.
Yeah.
That's her point. When you're contemplating suicide, even though I'm religious, I wouldn't. Let me tell you.
I've been there.
I could have just closed my eyes and died, but those 2 children kept me alive.
Yeah.
It wasn't me committing suicide. I could have shut my eyes and I could have been gone. I was having strokes, I was having seizures, I was clotted everywhere. So when she's trying to say you don't get it till you get it, the excruciating pain, you can't even put into words. So when you hear the Senate's working on it, it's like, faster?
Yeah.
Because my kids need me tomorrow. And I get that you have done a lot. I think the state of Mass has done is pushing faster than most. But if it comes down to, what makes sense to me, it's financial. So up at this top, if it comes down to, putting money into research or putting money into a wellness center that's going to make the money back so that the state's happy and then give us the extra for funding the people that are sick, then let's think of a plan that makes sense for everybody instead of pretending that elephant's not in the room, because that's what it is. The state doesn't know how to handle the amount of people that are sick. They can't afford it. So let's devise a plan that says, okay, our money's more well spent doing this, because we can't delegate it to research. It's not going to get us that far. Or we can't delegate it to all the sick people because we're not going to get them all. Why don't we delegate it to some brilliant center that's going to feed back to the state? We can give you back your money, and then at the same time help people, all at the same time. So what it comes down to is being portrayed properly at that level, and it's not. It's coming across as a bunch of people sick that are needy. I'll give back. I'll do whatever I can. I'll help build whatever I can to make everybody happy. Because thinking of suicide.
My name is Kristen. I'm a nurse practitioner, and I've worked for a long time in this field. I was on the state commission for the Lyme and associated illness. They wrote a paper in 2013 that was brought to the government. Unfortunately, it didn't go very far from there to get out to the people who really needed to hear it, which is the medical field. One thing I'm hoping that you can take away from this is we had talked about looking at CDC changes, but also realizing that there are two camps, one of them that you had referred to, that really have divided the medical field. And if you were able to bring back the fact that it's called ILEX, International Lyme and Affiliated Disease, if you were able to bring that back to the government as one of the main components of people who in the medical field have researched to an extensive degree and are treating patients correctly, that if we were able to get them to have some sort of standing in the government. Right now, they're sort of under the radar because there's been this backlash about Lyme disease as being something that sort of patients are, have something else. They can't have Lyme disease because of the testing has inaccurately shown. The main problem, I think, with the medical field is the education is not happening. There's a real, over the last 10 years that I've been involved in just Lyme. I've been a nurse practitioner for over 20, a nurse for over 30. So the main problem is that you can educate, but until you're able to actually, as you said, have people understand what it feels like to go through this illness, to understand the incidence of it, to understand that it's different for every person. Not everybody has the same symptoms. So you can't just say, oh, this is babesiosis because you're having fevers, intermittent fevers. This is Lyme disease because you had a bullseye rash. It's the physicians need to be educated to know that they need to hear what the patients are saying. The other side of that is that the insurance companies are not able, the physician's hands are tied. Okay, you want to treat with babesiosis for more than 3 weeks. Now that research is coming out showing that in immunosuppressed people, babesiosis can last up to 2 years. Now, if you want to treat babesiosis for more than 3 weeks, you have to have a diagnosis. A diagnosis of babesiosis does not last 2 years. So the insurance company will not cover the treatment. Now, one of the treatments is about $700 a month. And if your insurance company will not treat you, will not cover you, then the physician is sort of tied. You know, what are they going to do? You know, the insurance company is going to call them and say, you know, you can't keep treating this patient with this medication because you don't have a diagnosis. So there's, you know, there's multiple levels. But I think if you could come back to your federal level and talk to the CDC protocol, to encouraging people to listen to the ILAD Society versus other camps that just want to suppress the incidence of Lyme. The one other thing that is separate from that is that, and over the years that I've been working, I finally now just do advocacy. And as a nurse practitioner, of course, in Massachusetts, you need a supervising MD to actually treat with any kind of prescription privileges. And I have trouble finding anybody to do that, so I've just gone to an advocacy level. The sad thing is I get about 4 phone calls a week. I do not advertise. I have no web presence. I don't know where people find me. But that's a huge amount of people, and they're calling because they're desperate. They've seen their doctor. They've had a positive test. Some of them haven't. They're from all walks of life. They're CEOs, high-functioning people, pilots, mothers. You know, they're all walks of life calling me desperate. Where do I go? You know, what can I do? And it's just that's a huge number of people, and that was just this winter, you know, for a week. And I call and talk to them and try and help them with any kind of navigation of the system. It's also a problem. I worked on the Vineyard in a walk-in clinic, and the Vineyard's very high incidence. One of the treatment protocols was when a patient would come in, say they were from, you know, New York, and they'd come in, they were visiting, and they had a tick bite. One of the protocols was to give 1 dose of doxycycline, 200 milligram dose of doxycycline, and that was based on 1 animal study and 1 other study, which does not really tell us what happens. So they go home thinking they're cured, and then they don't feel well. Maybe their blood test shows negative because they didn't have an antibody response because they had 1 dose of doxycycline. So their doctor in New York says, well, you know, I don't know what's wrong with you. Maybe you just need to take a walk. Or, I mean, I've actually had patients tell me that their physicians, these are men that are, you know, CEOs, that their physician told them maybe you need to take a walk. If it's a woman, it's generally maybe you need some psychiatric medication, which is unfortunate, but that's what I'm hearing from people. And you know, the Cape population increasing in the summer, the way that it's treated differently for, you know, the federal government does have a lot going on with other things that are occurring. You know, as you had mentioned, the opiate problem and worldwide, you know, incidence. But the Lyme disease incidence is really growing. It's with the climate changing, warmer on the Cape. We're seeing more and more ticks that are carrying other deadly diseases such as the Rocky Mountain spotted fever. This is not just, as you had mentioned, Barnstable incidence. This is in China, this is in Europe, this is in Australia. It's all through the United States. So it really is something that we need to attack from many fronts. And I very much appreciate you being here and listening. This is a very important thing for us to work on. And it would help us, it would help me to know what we can do to help you to get us to a place that would have some resource, have some help educating the physicians, have some changes in the CDC protocol, and have some acknowledgement of the ILAD Society.
I mean, again, I think the best thing is always letting us know what's out there and letting us know again, specifically what you're seeing and how it can be changed. Like you said, with, if there's specific CDC rules or if there's specific, and you said ILAP, letting us know about that society so we can maybe reach out to them. I don't want to. We always have to do our research on this stuff. I don't want to say out of hand, oh yeah, we're just gonna do that. We have to sort of, see what's going on, see what procedures are in place, and for what reasons too. Sometimes there's actually good reasons why something's put in place. But I think, again, meetings like this are the best thing you can do. Reaching out to us, sending us information on what can be changed, what can be done from a policy standpoint. I guess is the best way to put it. I don't know if that makes any sense what I'm saying, but
Could a few of us go and speak to the caucus directly?
I can't because we're not the chairs of the caucus. We don't. I can certainly. We can talk about that offline. Maybe we can talk about what can be done. Maybe if you guys want to go down to DC, we can talk offline about maybe meeting with a few, at least maybe with the congressman. But I don't want to promise anything until we know what's going on. So
There was something else too about, did you want to go?
No, go ahead.
In the area of the prevention and education, I'm not saying I'm an expert right now on it because I don't know what's out there, but as of like 16 years ago, when my granddaughter was sick with Lyme, I looked at what was given to me at the time, like what kinds of information came through the school, and she was, at one school, and it just there wasn't anything on there that was helpful, really, other than the fact that I was aware about ticks or how to check. It just never indicated how serious it was. It indicated more or less, well, if you're bitten by a tick and you take it off and you're treated properly, you'll be fine. And nothing could be really further from the truth. I mean, there are probably some people out there who get bitten or aware of it and they're treated and they feel that it was successful, and then there's this whole group of other people or in between people that they could be sick for years. And she was considered a successfully treated person. She's 24 years old, and she's like a person that's really old, with her bones ache, they hurt, she has trouble walking and functioning, and it was all from the Lyme. But by blood work, by everything, however she was treated, she had the best treatment you could have at the time, and she still is not, she'll never be the same. And that's what I was very upset about. I called the Barnstable Health Department and I asked about those educational materials, and we kind of went back and forth, and I said I was never informed I lived in an endemic area. I didn't even know what that was. And I think when you think about all the problems that you're hearing from people in the group, I think that for right now, until more is done, please do something about education. Make those materials that go out to the schools or to wherever people are getting this. Let parents know how serious it is. It's prevention in that case is the only thing that could prevent that from happening to a child. And we need more of that. They need to be more truthful in those materials.
That's an excellent description of the long-term effects that are often ignored, that they live with. That's an excellent presentation. If I might ask, who is responsible for the excellent series of articles that have been in the Cape Cod Times?
As the editors of the Cape Cod Times.
Okay, now, to keep that going is important, but I also think that through the political grapevine, your boss, to take and get those same articles adapted to the locality that your boss talks to his counterparts up in the Worcester area and the Springfield area, to use what text is applicable in those areas. And I don't think it's being done out there, but I think it would be important that if your boss and the grapevine could suggest that the basic text would be available to, say, the Worcester Telegram Gazette and the Springfield paper, perhaps the Fitchburg, but broader coverage, because those were excellent articles.
Anthony, I'm Lisa Wavy.
Nice
to meet you. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming. I know all of you know me, but I had started the Upper Cape Lyme Support Group when I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease by Dr. Donta. I was one of the fortunate ones to get in with Dr. Donta. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about was that to understand, I'm sure you've heard a lot of stories, Anthony, but I started, everyone's made such good points too. I started having problems in 2009. So all of a sudden I started with a stiff neck, and I could not shake my stiff neck. So I kept going to the chiropractor, my good friend Dr. Fisher here on Main Street. I kept going for adjustments or whatever. And then it seemed like every month or two I'd pick up another symptom. So then I would get pains on the bottoms of my feet, and then I started getting pains in my face. And like you had said, high-functioning people. So I'm definitely a high-functioning person. I'm a business owner in town, an athlete. I would consider myself an athlete, and always took good care of myself. And then slowly, every little, I was just kept having problem after problem after problem, and I'd always been healthy. And so the concern that I have is that when I went to my primary doctor, I said to her, I've got this stiff neck or whatever. So that's when the doctor trail started. So it was neurologist, endocrinologist. You need to see this type of doctor. I'm going to send you here. I went to Mass Eye and Ear. I mean, I literally have been to the best doctors, and not one of them, they couldn't find anything in my blood, and I couldn't get a diagnosis. So from 2009 until 2014, when I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme, that bacteria, like Dr. Marazzi said, just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper into your cells. So the time progressed, I was just getting sicker and sicker, and I couldn't get anyone to say, okay, Lisa, this is what we think it is, or we're going to run, this test. And it's unfortunate, like you had said, they said, we think you have an anxiety issue. And this is a highly functioning, I have a master's degree, I have my own business, and they thought like I was going through some type of midlife crisis. And so it was 2014, I was at my shop, and it was one of the scariest things ever. I couldn't remember things. I couldn't add numbers together. And I'm like, what is going on? And a lot of you know my story, but I own a gift shop here in town. One of my customers was a nurse at the Brigham for 20 years. And I said to her, I call her Nurse Sue, and I said to her, Nurse Sue, I'm having trouble speaking, and I'm having trouble remembering things. And I felt like my brain was like a blank slate, and that's not me. Anyone that knows me knows that, I'm a list, note writer, all that good stuff. And she said, you either have MS or you have chronic Lyme disease. Now, I had already been tested for MS, and that came back negative. So I went to my primary doctor, and I said, what do you think about chronic Lyme disease? And she said, well, we'll run a Western blot, and we'll see where you're at. Now, I listed out all my symptoms, and it's more than what I had told you. She said, I'm willing to give you doxycycline for 21 days, but you don't meet the CDC requirement. So I'll give you the 21 days, and then after that, you're pretty much on your own. But if I wanted anxiety meds, she was happy to write those for me. And so I took the doxycycline for 21 days, and I actually felt a little bit better. And then once the medication ran out, I really started to get sick. And again, it was so hard for me, just like Eva and Beth, both athletes, high functioning. I was like, what is going on? And I would talk to my husband, and I would say, hon, I am really sick. And there were times I'd be in the store and I could barely walk. And I'm thinking to myself, I used to be able to run 5 miles a day, and now I can't even stand up for a half an hour. And so thank God for the people that I met here, and Lisa, you are a godsend, with the help that they provided. And the other point I wanted to make too was I went on Facebook and I Googled Lyme support groups. So I found a Lyme support group and put just a little bit of my story up, and so many people had messaged me,
with thoughts and ideas, and maybe you could get in with this doctor, because once your doctor says that they're not going to prescribe you and you're getting sicker and sicker, what do you do? I had no other option. And so they recommended a doctor that's up in Norwell, which I did. I brought my medical file and I went to see her. And as soon as I walked in, she looked at all of my information and she's like, you have chronic Lyme disease. So she was willing to treat me, and she did Jauntis protocol as well, which I was on the 1,500 milligrams of tetracycline or on the Biaxin and the Plaquenil. So I started that, and I didn't realize in the beginning how sick I was going to be when I started, like you had said, Beth, how sick I was going to be. So when I first started those medications, I'm not kidding, I thought I was dying. Like, I was so sick, and then I did write a letter to Dr. Dante. I wrote him a 6-page letter. My uncle had known of him, and my entire medical file, every doctor, every blood test, and then their office called me, and I got to see him, and Dr. Dante was like, you have chronic Lyme disease. So he was kind enough to continue to prescribe. And one of the points that I wanted to make, you know, the drugs that he put me on, especially the Biaxin and the Plaquenil, are drugs for malaria. So I personally don't want to be on drugs for malaria, but clearly I'm sick, and clearly he's figured out what's wrong. And when I watched all the documentaries on the opioid crisis, I'm thinking to myself, I can't even get drugs that are going to help me that aren't an opioid, but they're doling out opioids left and right, and I can't even get these drugs that I clearly do not want to take just to see if I can get better. So I started getting better. And unfortunately, like Beth had said, you know, the Babesia. I think I've eradicated the Lyme disease, but the Babesia came right to the surface. And so, you know, my stiff neck came back, my achy jaw, which is all part of Babesia. And so now, you know, I've taken the herbal route, which you can go online, there's all different types of protocols, but to Bethany's point, it isn't just about the antibiotics, it's about boosting your immune system too. So you need to have that balance of both in order to get better. You can't just take the antibiotics, you need something else too that's going to help, the vitamin C, you know, getting off gluten and dairy, all these things that they tell you to do to try to beat the Lyme and the co-infections. The other point that I wanted to make is, and then you see celebrities, which I think have helped us tremendously, like Yolanda Foster, who has come out, and then Avril Lavigne. I don't know if anyone had seen some of her interviews. You know, Avril Lavigne came out and said that, you know, she thought she was dying. A lot of people thought that she had a drug problem and was in rehab. She went kind of underground for a long time and was diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease. And she said in her latest interview she's halfway through the treatment, when she's done almost 2 years of treatment. But so for people like that to come forward, Alec Baldwin has chronic Lyme disease. You have all these people that have come out. I think that has helped us. And I guess, Anthony, my point is that imagine in 2009 when I started not to feel well, if I could have gotten those drugs. We're in 2016, and I'm 45 years old, and I'm still, if I can beat this Babesia, which I do my positive affirmations every night, and I say I'm going to beat this Babesia, you know, it's unbelievable to me how much I personally have gone through just to try to beat this disease, all because my primary doctor was only willing to give me the doxycycline for 21 days. So, and when I tell you that if you looked at my medical file, which I'm sure everyone has the same stack that I have, it's unbelievable. I mean, the amount of my co-pays, and all of the medications that have been, I literally have all these medications in a bag. They're all full, and I'm like, I don't need any of this stuff. I mean, they gave me stuff, muscle relaxers for my jaw. I'm like, I don't need that. Something's wrong with me. So when I joined that Lyme support group on Facebook, I checked it the other day. Guess how many members are just in this one group? There's millions of Lyme support group. There's 13,000 people in this one Lyme support group. And everyone, if you scroll through and you read the posts, everyone is suffering like I was. Everyone is in that same boat, like, all right, what are you taking now? What are you doing now? What medications? What antibiotics are you on? And everyone is like so desperate for help. And what scared me the most about my Lyme disease was that you know, when it got to the point where I was having trouble remembering and speaking, you know, and then when I talked to Dr. Donta, and he was like, well, that bacteria has now broken through your brain-blood barrier, and that's why you're having these problems. I mean, it was so scary. And so thank God for Dr. Donta, thank God for every single person in this group, because I wouldn't have been able to get through it. And I look at myself now and I'm like, and I say this to Eva all the time, and we all text each other 1,000,000 times a day, like I look at myself and I'm like, you did it, like you're getting there, you're getting better. And so I just wanted to make sure, Anthony, that you knew that here's Lisa Laney, 45 years old, you know, business owner, I'm educated, you know, I can't wait to get back into running and stuff like that, but that's just my story.
Yeah.
And if there's 13,000 people on Facebook that I read that are struggling, there's more. There's so many more people that need help, and you know, anything that you can do to try and help people like myself, I mean, we'll be forever grateful. You know, we need people like yourself to advocate for us.
John Caldwell, who's one of the most wealthy men in the UK, he owns a couple huge corporations. His whole entire family got struck down. He just set up in the UK because they can't get treatment either. It's just as bad.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even worse. But he's trying to figure it out too. I mean, he's taking his own money at this point because the UK government can't help them because the paperwork for insurance doesn't add up.
Mm-hmm.
The other point I wanted to make too, Anthony, was that when I look at, and like I said, we all have the same extensive medical file for someone who is perfectly healthy. When you talks about insurance, and like you had said, Bethany, you trying to get your PIC line, how hard you fought to try and just so that you could get to the point that you're at right now. When I look at all the doctors I've been to from 2009 to 2014, I've cost my insurance company a ton of money. If they had just given me the prescription for tetracycline and for Bioxin and Plaquenil, they would have saved themselves hundreds of thousands of dollars, because it wasn't like I just went to the neurologist once. Well, Lisa, you need to come back. We want you to try this. You need to come back. And then all the imaging that I had done, all the endoscopies I had done. So it's, you know, if we can get to that point to say, okay, we recognize what Lyme is through education, and Lydia, you had a great point about educating, even all the stuff that Lisa brought today, to get that out into doctors' offices and out into the population. I mean, we know to check our animals, we know to check our children. I mean, we know to do that because we have Lyme disease. But look at all the, you know, all the parents that let the dog and the cat sleep in the bed with the kids. I mean, there's so many facets to it. So, like I said, my point about the insurance company is just that they have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on me when they really didn't have to. So I just wanted to make those points.
Until we know what we can do to really help people or how to treat this, the prevention is so important, and that's something that your office can do, is to really get it out there to, you know, to the school, to wherever the educational materials come from, to let parents know how serious this is. Up until it happened, you know, to my family, to my granddaughter, and then in later years to myself, I may have been viewed as like, you know, after I found out what it was, I'm sure people must have thought, well, she's paranoid. I didn't want my children exposed, walking around in the woods, or the animals, anything, because I knew how devastating this could be.
If you don't catch it in its infancy and get right on the medications, that's when it really starts to turn into a problem. And then, you know, you don't know if you've been bitten by the tick. And it's so funny, because if you talk to somebody who understands Lyme and you say, well, the doctor said that I didn't know that I've been bitten by a tick. Well, these ticks are microscopic, you know, so I just feel like if you don't catch it in its infancy and then it festers, like in my case, and just continues and continues. I mean, look at where all of us, you know, are at just because we didn't catch the tick bite. And so that should be part of the education as well.
Yeah, and the other thing that I wanted to bring up, that Anthony, that I've talked to lots of newspapers and they don't bring this point to light, is the problem of the Western blot that Lisa mentioned about you didn't have a CDC positive Western blot, which requires 5 bands on the Western blot to be positive for you to be CDC, to follow the CDC guidelines. And the reason that is because the Lyme vaccine that was out years ago when I was still working, giving it to patients, was taken off the market in 2002 because it was giving people Lyme disease. I have the press release right here, February 26, 2002, and because of that problem, the Western blot was changed at that point so that they took out 2 bands because people who had had the LymeX vaccine would forever be positive with the 2 bands. So they took those 2 bands out of the CDC criteria. So now when someone gets tested, they took a whole chunk out of the test that would say that they could be positive. So if Lisa had had the full Western blot, they may have been able to treat them. Which is IGeneX in California, they do test for that whole complete panel of Western blot, and that's why when people go there and pay out of pocket to have that test, it comes out positive. So that's a huge piece.
And I'm glad Lisa brought that up because when when you go and your doctor gives you the lab work to go, it's really companies like IGeneX are the ones that are going to do the full panel, but they're not covered by insurance, which kind of blows my mind a little bit because they're saying they're the leading testing group for Lyme disease, but they're not covered by insurance. So like you had said, Lisa, it's a rich person's disease. So if you have the means to pay and have all the extensive tests done, you can probably get yourself to a positive diagnosis. But they don't have that same capability when you walk into your doctor's office and they go, okay, we're going to do the Western blot. Well, that Western blot isn't the same as if you pay $1,000 to IGeneX, then you're going to get your full panel. To me, I don't understand that. I really don't. So
I can just share one other story that you might want to take to heart. I have two daughters. My second one, who's 11 now, I was bitten multiple times, but specifically, I was 6-7 months pregnant, tick in hand, bullseye. I don't know a ton about Lyme. I walk into the doctor's office. I said, looks like Lyme. They said, let's test. We don't want to give you antibiotics if it's not necessary. Made sense to me. Test results came back negative. I wasn't treated, passed in utero, bed rest. She tried coming out at 30 weeks. Didn't know, I'd want to come out of an infection too if I was, a little baby inside, and she ended up at Children's Hospital. She's a healthy kid, she tested positive, but those next 10 years of my life I was with neurologists because so many issues going on. And in that 10 years, I was tested one time for Lyme, and it came back equivocal, which is not no, it's not yes, you're supposed to retest again. You don't have Lyme. That was the end of it. So not only did the CDC protocol wasn't followed, it's because doctors are not educated. I'm not looking for malpractice. I'm looking to educate doctors. 11 years ago, I had a bullseye, a tick, and I said, test it. I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
They dumped the tick. They looked at the test, and they said, you're negative, don't worry about it. Meanwhile, I had puron Lyme disease, sick as a dog, in bed rest, didn't even put the two together because I was ignorant. And even 5 years later, I have fusions in my diet. It goes on and on with CNS Lyme. They tested me one time just for the heck of it, a neurologist, and it comes back equivocal. So that goes to ignorance of doctors not being educated. I'm not mad, I just want education out there. I'm not the only one that had that happen. I'm not.